right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Welcome, everyone. We are at Sprint Demos, Sprint number 39. This is going to be Fleet version 4.67, codenamed Yttrium. Yttrium was discovered in Ytterby, Sweden. That's where it gets its name from. I was going to tell a joke about cobalt, radon, and yttrium, but it was too corny. So we'll just hand off to George and the MDM product group.
But alrighty, getting us started is Victor.
All right. Thank you, George. So we're going to talk about integration with Skim. So this user story to add end user IDP information to host vitals. As an IT admin, I want to use end users info, specifically from my IDP, to the host vitals page. So that's like the host details page in Fleet, so that I can identify which end user is assigned to each host. Okay, so what is Skim? So Skim is a standard, an industry standard. It has a couple RFCs. It's an HTTP-based protocol. And in this case, Fleet is going to act as a server and receive information from the IDP, like Okta. So this means we are implementing / exposing a bunch of these endpoints, including the operations we can do on these endpoints. We're using a third-party library as a wrapper, but then we have to actually do like all the filtering, all the patching, database access ourselves. Since it's an industry standard, there do exist some validators. So for example, Microsoft Entra has this validator where it can actually discover your schema and then do validation for it. For this release, we're only going to be supporting Okta. Okta has a smaller set of Skim features that we need to support. Entra ID has a bit more. So if I run the Entra ID validator on what we have currently, we are failing on some patch and filter functionality, which we haven't added yet, but hopefully we'll add that soon. So how do we connect? How does Okta connect with Fleet? So if we go to our Fleet instance, go to settings, integrations, identity provider, we have this new page here. So basically, when you configure Skim in your IDP provider, such as Okta, you will provide the Fleet's URL as well as Fleet's API key. So we are going to be just using our standard bearer API token for Skim. And Marco has written a feature guide about exact steps you need to go in Okta to set this up. So basically, once a request comes in, a successful request comes in from Skim, we will update here this timestamp. If there's an error that comes in, we'll see an error, and we'll try creating an error in a couple of minutes here. So there's the Skim integration works with our SAML integration, because the way the IDP information is linked to the host is starts all at the end user authentication flow. So when you go through the macOS setup, in that flow, we get the information from SAML regarding your IDP username, and that's how we link the IDP information to your host. So there's a link to a more detailed video how that SAML integration works, but I do want to show you one moment from that video. So in the macOS setup, when we go to the screen, okay, finishing a moment, we go up here to create computer account. So as you can see in this example, the full name and the account name is populated. So in this case, this was an integration with Okta. The account name comes from the SAML response from Okta, but the full name did not come from the SAML response, but we actually, because it wasn't present in the SAML response, we fall back to Skim and got the full name from the Skim integration in this example. All right, let's take a look at how our hosts look in Fleet. So let's first take a look at a host that just has the SAML end user authentication, but is not integrated with Skim. So in that case, we still have the username we got from SAML, but we don't have the full name or the groups that we would get from Skim. And then the old device emails, human device mapping, we still have those here under Google Chrome profiles. So let's take a look at a host that is integrated with Skim. Is this host, so we have the username, we now have the full name and the groups. In this case, it's just only one group, but we'll go ahead and add one shortly, and then another example of other emails. So let's go jump to Okta. Keep me signed in. Okay, good. So want to demonstrate how a few things look in Okta. So first of all, provisioning. When you have to create an application and then enable Skim on that application. And then the provisioning, you can see what Skim attributes on the left here map to your Okta values. So here's an example provisioning. Another thing to note is when you want to add a group, at least this is how it works in Okta, when you want to add a group, you need to go and actually explicitly push the group into Skim. So you would push the group and the membership of that group into Fleet. All right, so let's go ahead and modify our users. So we're going to go to directory people. We're going to modify this user, Johnny Commas, which corresponds to the user on this host. We're going to go ahead and edit his email username, his last name. Currently, we still expect for the Okta integration, the username for the Okta integration to be the same as their email, which is what we've seen from the customers we spoke with. And we saved it. Let's modify a group as well. So we're going to add a group to this guy, add the group. So we modify his name and we added the group. So let's go ahead back to Fleet, refresh. So now you see his new name is Johnny Spaces. His username has changed and there's an extra group here, group 2. So basically this information effectively gets updated near real time, even if the device is offline. So as the last thing, what we want to try, and I haven't actually tried this, is we're going to try to break this integration. So let's go to Applications, My Skim. I haven't tried this, so what I'm going to do is disable the family name. So we are requiring username, given name, and family name to be present for users. So let's go ahead and for sync, a job created. I hope that job is going to run soon. Let's go back. Okay, it looks like that didn't work. Well, let's try one more thing. That I did try this other way. It should work. We go to people and we're going to modify them again. Save. Let me modify his first name. Save. All right, I'm not able to break it at this point for some reason. but trust me, I was able to break it before.
I think
I
it takes a minute or two to send that request to Fleet from Okta, so maybe
What
you
was
can.
that?
I think it takes few like minute or two to send request to
Maybe
Fleet.
because I kicked off that other batch job, so maybe it's
Mm.
it's going to take a little while for this to come through. Okay, that's all I had. Marco, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty much it. There's some tooltips in UI if like it's missing, for example. So I think with this error it should come, but yeah, I think in general that's it. So we import users from Skim, and if anything changes like name or groups or email, even like username, that's automatically reflected to Fleet. So IT admins doesn't need like a need to care about it. So it's all automatic. So yeah.
All right. I think that's it for me. Back to you, George.
Alrighty, then I have a story here that was developed by Martin. We've just got a demo video. This is the request to be able to cancel upcoming activities. As an IT admin, I want to cancel upcoming activities so that I can prioritize important activities or cancel wrong actions. And we'll be watching this at 1.5. Let me know if the sound is working.
Okay, so this is a test for cancellation of upcoming activities. I have 3 hosts, macOS, Windows, and the Linux box. The Linux one is OS Worry Perf, it's a real host. But it doesn't matter for this current test because all hosts are offline. I just want to make sure they don't process anything. And it will just be enqueuing stuff in the upcoming queue and making sure that cancellation works. So let's start. Let's start with the Mac one. So I will start by running a script. It doesn't matter which one because it won't be processed. So let's make this one pending, and then I will make another script pending, and like one of each actions that we can enqueue, and I will test canceling each of those extra actions. So one of those is a package. Like I think this one password is a software package, and there is a VPP app. So I will not be able to test uninstall for the moment. I will need to install some stuff first on the host. But let's try with this first attempt. So I have now 4 upcoming activities. I will not touch the first one right now. I will just cancel the subsequent actions. So let's start with this one, the script. I have the cancellation button available, information. So let's go ahead and cancel this. Okay, so this looks good. Let's cancel this. It does refresh automatically. It is canceled. If I go to past, I can see the canceled action. All right, looking good so far. Let's cancel now the software install. 1 password. There we go, and the VPP app. Okay, all 3 have been canceled. All 3 have their activity, and let's look. We should have also the global activities, and they're here. So this is all good. And finally, for the Mac box, I will cancel the one that is pending. So this one is actually ready to run if the host was online. So this is a bit a different implementation on the backend. So I will cancel this one now. Request script. All right. And it does show up here. Okay, so first test looks good. Now what I will do is I did cancel a script that was first in line in the upcoming queue, and I will now cancel a software install and the VPP app install that is first in queue, just to make sure we cover everything. So software install, we can see that it hasn't been installed yet. The cancellation kind of clears up the pending status, so this is another good thing. And also, if I click on 1 password here, stats look good too. All right, so 1 password is a package, software package, and Bear is the VPP app. Let's go ahead like this. Back to my host. A couple of upcoming activities. So I canceled the first one. 1 password is a custom package. Cancel. That's good. And this one now is ready to run. I cancel this. And it shows up in canceled activity. So far so good. Yeah. So far so good on Mac. Let's try Windows. So same thing, I will start by running a script, then queuing another script that will not be already in progress, and then queuing software install. There's no VPP app, of course, for Windows. So FileZilla, for example. All right, upcoming the script. the other script and the software install. So I will cancel subsequent activities, so just this one that is not already in progress. And the software install. Past activities are created, and past activities show up in global feed. So now, same thing, I will cancel the same actions, but as the first upcoming activity. So I already have a script here. I will add a software install. Let's just check the stats first. 0, 0, 0. It's like nothing happened. Install this one. Installing pending. Details. Alright, so I cancel the first one, the script. And now the current one is the software install. I cancel this. Shows up in the canceled activities. Just want to double check the software status. Yeah, correct. And shows up in the global activities. Okay, so yeah, good first test. Now I will bring the host online and yeah, do another test with uninstall, and also like canceling a script that might have been in progress and that returns results eventually. So a few more tests to do, and then I also have wipe and lock to test. So more recordings to come.
Alrighty, and that was it for the MDM team for stories. Apologies for a bit of an audio snafu, but it's in the Sprint Demos doc. You can follow the link if you want to rewatch that at a slower pace.
Cool. Thank
Back to you,
you,
Luke.
MDM. Great feature shipping. I know that SCIM IDP work is heavily requested. I see 7 customer requests on it and a couple of prospect requests. So excited to get that shipped and see the activity log continue to mature and capabilities. Next up is the orchestration product group. So I'm going to hand it over to Sharon.
Thank you, Luke. Before we start the demo, I want to mention something that we will not demo. We are working on a big feature of conditional access with cooperation with a big third-party provider of zero trust access. Jacob and Lucas are working in coordination with the product team and with Eric on this feature. We did great progress. We will continue to develop it next sprint. The reason we cannot introduce it is that the work with the third party is not completed. It is work in progress, and hopefully soon we will present it. And with that, and if you have any questions, you can ask in our channel. We'll be happy to provide any information. So we'll start with Jacob with two features. Take it, Jacob.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. So this first bit stemmed from some frustration that we had with the Fleet web URL validation. So as a user trying to use Fleet, I want to be able to configure a server URL with consistent validation rules that allow localhost so that I can easily try out Fleet locally. So we've got validation of this URL, which is a single value in the Fleet config, but can be set in a number of places. The first of those is here on the setup flow. So if we try to set localhost, we'll see that, okay, we need to use HTTPS or HTTP. And if we do that, it works. The next is in the settings under Fleet web address, and we have the same validation rules. Looks good. And the third place is directly via the API. Now I just set up a new Fleet instance, so I'm gonna have to grab a new API token and add it to our authorization here. And I'm gonna change this right after the Zoom share, so no security issues here. Oh, I guess we lost. Now there it is. So again, same validation rules from the server. And previously these were all different, kind of validating slightly differently, which led to some really frustrating states that seemed a little simpler than they ended up being. So that's that work. And I'm going to set it now to the Fleet URL that my test hosts are actually using to demonstrate the next feature. So, oh. In the meantime, give one more shout out to Victor for OpenBlur, which is that. I don't know. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. You can set. Okay, I'm not going to take our time now, but check out OpenBlur. It's great. So that is my ngrok URL now set. Now the next feature here is we wanted to include when a host enrolls in Fleet. I'll just read the user story, actually. As an IT admin, I want the ID of the enrolled host to be included on the Fleet enrolled audit activity. That's what's generated when a host enrolls in Fleet, so that my activity feed webhook will include that information in the payload. Excuse me. So now that we've changed the Fleet web address, we'll have to change the enrollment, the enroll secret as well. Give it a couple seconds here. We should see hosts enrolling. There's my Mac. And we will see in the activity log. Let's get it one more time. There's activities. Ah, wrong page. Activities. That in the details, we now have the host ID here. And that's going to be really useful for our customers using log integrations with these activities. That's it. Any questions about those two features? All right, thanks. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Jacob. The next feature was developed by Dante and Scott, and it is a continuation to what we did with the queries. We are now able to set policies according specific labels. So whatever power we have with determining labels, we can select specific hosts for specific policies. Scott and Dante, who wants to start?
I'll start. Let me just share my screen with sound.
Hey, we're going to be looking at custom targets, labels for policies. As a user, adding and editing a policy, I want to target hosts based on labels so that I can be more specific with the set of hosts within a baseline. We can see here, in my All Teams section, we have two labels. Label 1, which contains this host, and label 2, which contains this host. If we head over to our policies page, we can create a policy, and as you see here, when we're saving, we can choose custom here instead of all hosts for the target, and then we can choose between include any or exclude any. Include any will send the policy only to hosts that have these labels. Exclude any will send the label policy to all hosts except for those listed here. So if we create an include any policy for label 1, oops, gotta name it. We go back to our policies. This will now only run on the hosts in label 1. The same can be said about team policies. So if we go here, we still have our inherited policy 1 from the global policies. We can then also create a team-specific policy. Again, custom, this one will be an exclude, let's exclude all hosts in label 2. Call it policy 2. Oops, did I forget to do that? There we go. There we go. Okay, so it looks like I just forgot that. All right, and now we have our 2 policies. We can then also see this in the backend. You can see here, if we look at our global policies API, we have our policy 1 with labels include any, label 1. And then if we do our team 1 policies, we're going to see we have our inherited policies with include any, label 1, and our team specific policy, policy 2, exclude any, label 2. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. I also want to mention that in that demo, there was an issue where the policy didn't set correctly for the team, but that's been fixed since I recorded the demo. Now I guess I'll pass it off to Scott. Sorry.
You say something, Sharon?
I just asked you if you want to continue. Please take it.
All right. Yes. So I'm going to now demo the equivalent GitOps features for adding labels to policies. Let me share my desktop here. So I have a team here with a couple of policies I've already set up that don't have any labels on them. So initially, you'll see they're set to target all hosts. If I go to my GitOps setup, you'll see I have labels in here, but I've got them commented out. So I'm just going to go ahead and uncomment those. And you'll see, as Dante was demonstrating in the UI, you have the choice of including any labels or excluding any labels for your policies. So I'll go ahead and save that and then apply my GitOps. And you'll see it's synced to policies. If we now go back to those policies, I have one that's including label dos. When I did these in Spanish, I forgot that it lists these in alphabetical order, so dos comes before uno here. But yes, this one is excluding the label I wanted excluded. This one is excluding uno. This one is including dos. If we go back, we have new validation on this, which I've added to all of the GitOps entities that can include labels. So this is software and queries and profiles as well. If I try to add both include and exclude on the same policy, it will now kick it out and say it has multiple label keys and please choose one of include or exclude. Different entities have different abilities. Some can do include or exclude, some can only do include, some can do also include all. So for any of those now, if you try to add multiple keys on the same entity, it's going to kick it out, which is, I think, a good improvement because previously you could catch this in dry run, but the only validation was actually on the API. So after you did the dry run, if you didn't fix it, you could end up in a situation where it might have applied certain parts of your GitOps and then failed because it reached this point where you had multiple keys on there. So just to demonstrate one more thing here, if we now just take, say, both labels here, put it under exclude. So now this exclude policy should exclude both these labels, and this include one should now include all labels after I apply my GitOps. And if we go back, exclude now has both the labels, and include has switched back to all hosts. As part of this ticket, we also wanted to make the UI consistent between the policies and the queries. Previously, the queries, you could target different platforms, but it used kind of checkboxes, not checkboxes, but kind of a drop down. And the targeting for labels was under advanced. So what we have now is a system that looks exactly like the policies as far as the targeting goes. And one of the benefits of this, as you'll see here, is if I take a query that only applies to Chrome OS and I go to save it, it'll automatically target the right platforms here. And as you can see here, the labels is in the same location as it is for policies. So those two are now consistent. And that's all for applying labels to policies.
Great, thank you, Scott and Dante. And next we have Dante presenting building fleetd on Windows ARM.
All right, thank you. Me again. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm going to share my screen. All right.
This is the ticket, Add Native Support, No Emulation for Fleets Agent on Windows ARM. As a Fleet user, I want to enroll Windows ARM hosts that don't support x86 emulation so that I can manage the cutting-edge Windows laptops. Now in this release, Windows ARM support is fully supported by all components of Fleet, including Orbit, Desktop, and OSQuery. If we come over to our host page here and click Add a Host, go over to the Windows section, we can see there is now a flag here that's suggested for ARM hosts, --arch equals ARM64. If we want to see what generating a host, what that looks like, I've created this command in a multi-line fashion just to make it easier to understand what's going on here. Same thing as before, type MSI, scripts and desktop. This is the new flag, arch equals ARM64. These other flags are only here because this isn't released on the stable channel yet, so I'm using the edge channel. If we click enter, this is going to take a minute, but we're going to see that the host is generating a Fleet agent here. There we go. This part will take just a second. It's fetching the components and creating the installer. There we go. And we can see here we have our Fleet OSQuery ARM64 MSI installer. Just for fun, we can check. And yes, it does say here ARM64. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dante. And a little bird whispered in my ear that there's going to be a very deep drill of how this is done in one of the Eng Together sessions. So stay tuned. Thank you, Dante. Next,
Thank you.
Lucas will present. Sorry? Yeah.
Oh, I just said thank you.
Thank you, Dante. Next, Lucas will present a new process for detecting, fixing, and releasing critical issues on our Fleet Docker images. Take it, Lucas.
All right. Hi, folks. I'll share my screen. Yeah, so this GitHub issue is mostly around automation and process in Fleet. We want to have automation that detects vulnerabilities in our products, right? Instead of having customers or users reporting them to us, right? Which happened in the past, so that's why we created this issue. We want to be the first ones to discover these things and then have a process on what to do. So again, it's mostly around a lot of GitHub actions that we're adding on this, and then like a process. So the goal here is that we're going to have a new file here under security folder. There's a new folder called security, and then there's a README. This is under review, but it will mostly look like this. It will explain some of our scanning processes. For example, we have some scanning on source code. Every time we publish, we have a PR, we scan for vulnerabilities in source code. And we also are going to have a scanning on what about, let's say, Fleet server releases that are already released. We are also going to scan those in case there's a critical vulnerability in those. So we have a process on what to do when that happens. And actually, like for us to detect this first before our customers. We also have we're going to scan for high and critical vulnerabilities on PRs. on the Docker images too. So there's a lot of automation to prevent vulnerable code to be released, and then also for release code, to detect those as soon as we can and then fix that. The other purpose around the first purpose is automation and process. The other purpose is, Fleet is not free from vulnerabilities. So what happens when we found one, right? When we find a new vulnerability in Fleet. So as I said, we have a process now, which is documented here. The engineer working on that will have to probably follow these steps. And then the important part here is that we have a status, I'm calling it status MD, where we track all the vulnerabilities that are reported by the tools like Trivy. And then we actually document if we're affected or not and why we're not affected. This document is automatically generated from a thing called BEX files. BEX files are a machine-readable JSON, but obviously JSON that basically are used to explain, for example, DCB 2023 blah 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 reported on a Fleet CDL component does not affect Fleet because this is the reason, because we don't use the package in a specific way, right? So a customer running or a user running a scanning on our Docker images will see that there is a CVE and they're going to be worried about it, right? So if somebody runs Trivy, let's say on the 462.4, right? They want to deploy this image. If they run this Trivy scanning, they're gonna get this critical high, right? It's scary, right? And some people and some companies have like controls over this. They don't want this deployed, on their infrastructure. But if they go to the status web page, they're gonna see that we are actually tracking those, and they will see that, for example, that thing there, it's just not exploitable, right? So again, we're gonna have a lot of process to detect this, and this in the future, if we have a CVE that actually affects Fleet, it will be here, it will say affected, and then we'll work on it, and then we'll update this document and so on. So it's basically a lot of process around that. Yeah, I think that's about it on this end.
Hey, Lucas, I got a quick question about this. Besides Docker images that we import from ourselves, have you found that this is finding vulnerabilities that our other scans don't pick up? Like, obviously we have dependency scanning, but I think we have other scanning going in our workflows as well.
Yeah, so we do have scanning in our source code, but that's kind of different because that one actually, we're scanning before releasing, right? As far as I know, we don't have any other scanning other than Trivy to scan for released, software. And I think we should probably continue adding more tools to detect those.
Nice.
Any more questions for Lucas? If not, then thank you, Lucas. And Luke, back to you. This concludes the feature part.
Cool. Thank you, orchestration. Some great stuff there. Next, I'm going to hand off to Tim and the software group to talk about what they've been working on. Primarily, it's been focused on OS query and bug fixes and improvements. But the reason I wanted to talk about it a little bit is because one of the most valuable things about Fleet is that we're abstracting away the difference between devices. That managing software is the same for Windows or for Apple. And that's really valuable that the end users don't have to think about it. But the folks building the features do, because those interfaces are vastly different. So all of our learnings from Mac software may not be applicable to Windows. So last release, we released the first Fleet maintained apps for Windows. Had a ton of learnings and spent a lot of this sprint iterating and following up with additional work on that. So Tim's just going to talk about that a little bit before we move on to bug fixes and improvement.
Yeah, tons of learnings this sprint. A majority of our sprint was kind of unwrapping a lot of the complexities around installing software on Windows in particular, and how it kind of differs from our kind of existing pattern around Mac OS, and kind of and kind of when we really sat down and formulate our test plans, it really kind of brought up a lot of this complexity, and we ended up, well, I'll share my screen here. You'll see kind of a lack of Windows apps here on the right side, which we're able to do outside of a release thanks to kind of new architecture. So that's great that we have this kind of control, and that was shows a real benefit there. We can fix things really fast. We can take things out of the scope really fast if we need to, and that's what we're largely doing early in the sprint. I'm going to show this test matrix real quick here. I think one of the larger complications we found with the Windows apps really kind of falls into largely in this column here, and the concept of user installed apps, which is not a concept, not generally a concept we have on Mac OS. But it brings up a lot of complications. What happens when you install a machine install over a user install, a user install over a machine install? Does it break? What happens to user data? And so those are a lot of the things that we took out of scope. We're actually kind of pushing back back onto the drafting board and kind of rethinking how we want to address those. Some other things that are happening that we maybe don't see as much on Mac OS is kind of this this discrepancy between what OS Query reports as the app and what and the metadata that we see in an MSI or through Winget, and that differentiation. So there's definitely some extra complexity that we're uncovering here, and so those are great things to find out now as we before we start adding more and more apps. I think folks have seen that we have some large app numbers we want to hit this quarter, and so kind of defining what it means here to add an FMA, and what does that mean, and what is the expected behavior, is a really important thing, I think, to define up front. And so more discussions coming, but yeah, tons of learning this sprint for sure.
Yep, and that's how we learn. We dive in, we start doing it, and we find where the edges are at. This table really illustrates, I think, why we needed a dedicated software product group, and appreciate the rigor that y'all are applying here, because as you can see, what we're dealing with is it's on an app-to-app, platform-to-platform basis, behavior differences, right? How it behaves if you install over a user-installed app, how it behaves on ARM versus x86, all these kind of small permutations that we have to account for in order to be able to provide the experience to our users that we want to. So appreciate all the work y'all are putting in there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we're going to shift into improvements and released bug fixes. We have 45 minutes left, so if there's something of note that you want to demo, feel free to do that, as long as we can finish up on time. So head over to George for MDM Product Group.
All righty, I'll pull open the sprint demo. I'm actually going to jump ahead because my updates are pretty quick. We've got what Martin worked on, making it so that if iPhones or iPads are enrolled in MDM in Fleet and they've been deleted from Fleet, they will return. So there's now a process that reclaims them because they are still MDM enrolled. So the hosts will now show back up, as we explain in the tooltip there, or the modal when you try to delete the iPhone hosts, as well as Sarah fixing the fact that our Bootstrap package was being installed at re-enrollment and not just during the setup experience. All right, and then Victor's also got a bug to talk about.
All right, thank you, George. So this was actually an engineering initiated story. So the issue that I noticed is that all our Go tests were always running with the same out-of-process dependencies. So dependencies like MySQL, dependencies like ZSH. So all test suites were always installing everything, whether they actually needed it or not. So the improvement was kind of to put in a pattern where you can exclude or include certain out-of-process dependencies depending on your test suite. So how this looks is, if you look in the test results now, first of all, there is a new kind of fast test suite, which does not have any out-of-process dependencies. It runs in a minute. So if you have some packages that don't need any external dependencies, you can add them to this test suite. So that's the main improvement, really. The follow-up issue is that I noticed that fleet control is our now long pole as far as testing. And fleet control is a single package, so it should be fairly straightforward to break it up into multiple packages, or at least run the tests in parallel inside that package. And that's all I want to mention. Back to you,
Alrighty,
George.
and then we have our debut bug fix for Jordan Montgomery. Welcome to the team.
Thanks. Yeah. 1 second. So I picked up this ticket around the Fleet desktop app not properly showing. So, what would happen is that you would go through an autopilot install, and after the install, you might have this little empty icon, but no actual Fleet desktop app. And that's due to the fact that during the autopilot process, there's like a Windows Hello setup and some other things, and the taskbar is not fully functional, so we can't fully start up the desktop app during that process. There's now a retry on that, so essentially, if you get through autopilot and see this within a minute or two, you'll see the Fleet desktop app. As a nice side effect of this, we've now got some docs incoming on how to test all this with local builds rather than like released components, so you can iterate on it and test with your branch changes. So that is all for me.
Awesome job, Jordan. And that's it for MDM. Back to you, Luke.
Great, thank you. Over to orchestration and Sharon for bug fixes and improvements.
Thank you. We'll start with Scott with a list of improvements and bugs. Scott, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I was looking for the list of improvements. All right. Let's see. What do we got? Pardon me. Here we go. Okay, so we upgraded Go to version 1.24.1. It's a pretty straightforward thing to upgrade Go nowadays. We don't have a lot of things that required changing. It's mostly stuff in our GitHub workflows, but I did put together a doc for the next person who does this to look at to make it a little bit easier to do. I talked about this one. This was just updating the query UI to match policies. Cron monitor error reporting is now digested. This was an ask, from me and anybody who spends any time in the Help P1 channel. We report on cron errors and cron jobs every hour, but some jobs run more than once an hour, so they can accumulate a lot of errors. So you'd end up with like 10 posts in Help P1 for basically the same thing, and those will now get rolled up, and it'll just tell you that a certain job had, say, 10 errors in the last hour, and it will give you the last one. And you can always use the logs to kind of surface the rest of them if you really need to. And with Lucas's help, we've updated the FleetD releaser scripts that you run to release a new version of Fleet, or FleetD, I mean. So you can now release patch releases instead of just releasing from the main branch. You can release from a patch branch to a patch version, which should help us, make minor improvements and updates in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. I want to say something about the last one. This was one of the super important engineering initiative that was never urgent. It took time to do, but I'm very happy that we did that. It kind of follows the same process that we do for Fleet server releases. and will allow us to keep any release version and do patches on it even a year from now. Super important. Thank you, Scott. And next we move to Lucas.
All right. I'll be quick. First one, many of us probably hit this on the dog food environment where like uploading, at least me from afar, uploading a 300 megabyte to dog food timed out at 25 seconds. And it only happened in dog food for some reason. And then we found out that the culprit was the APM package that we use, which is only enabling dog food and load testing environments. Anyways, we have a fix on this APM. We have a contributor. We contributed to the APM agent.go package, and then we are now using that fix. So the fix is already merged. Next bug is use Fleet Desktop on Firefox on Fedora Linux without installing Genome extension and Google Chrome. So I mean, I think we all agree that Linux is super important for Fleet. So we want to make the best end user experience on Linux. Unfortunately, Fedora and Debian, for example, in this case, do not have good support for tray icons. And Fleet Desktop obviously requires like a tray icon. So we needed this issue is actually to solve that, right? And the initial fix for this, when we actually implemented this, we found that if you want to do this automatically, you will still get, give me a second, I'll try to load a image. You'll still get this prompt. This is because Linux and Genome, like to be secure, they don't allow to install extensions automatically without prompting the user. So the user would get a prompt out of nowhere about, in this case, FleetD installing the extension. And then because of this, we decided to not do this automatically and instead use two features that Fleet have that are amazing, which is policy and script execution. So we decided to use that instead, and we wrote an article explaining, and this gives more control to admins. If they don't want this, they can not do this. But if they do want to enable this for their Fedora and Debian end users, then they can follow this article, which basically show you these links are broken, but there's a PR to fix them. Let me just go here. We define a policy and a script that admins can use to fix this scenario for Linux users. So you have a policy here. And now that we have labels for policies, we don't need this part because this is actually checking that if your Linux device is a Fedora or Debian, then we succeed the policy. So this is not going to be needed once we have labels released. And then there's a script here to remedy it. So I'll demo this real quick if possible. So we have this Fedora. We have this Fedora. Let's say that we have FleetD installed here, but there's no tray icon. So what will happen now is I will move this Fedora host on Fleet. A second. Obviously, I broke my local environment. Just a sec. Okay, I think I won't be able to demo this now because I pulled from main, but if you, let me see if I can actually do a refetch here. All right, seems to be loading. But I'm gonna transfer this host, this Fedora host, to a team that has the policy. So you can see here that the policy is right here. It's not hasn't run yet. We're gonna have to wait for this to refresh. Let's give it a minute. All right, I'll refetch again because I did the transfer after the refetch. And what will happen is this policy will fail because Fleet the extension is not installed on the Fedora system. This is just slow because VMs, but okay, policy failed. And now we should see script being queued for this host. It's probably there, all right. And if I go to the VM, I should get a prompt at some point. All right, I got a prompt here to install the extension. And then let's wait 10 seconds. There we go. User clicks install, and then the Fleet icon will pop up here automatically. So that's about it. The same fix also works for Debian distributions.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. And last we have Dante.
Oh, I was muted. Okay, all the three pretty easy fixes this sprint. We have this issue where under some circumstances, if you set the GitOps URL, changing other settings would unset the URL, and that's been fixed now. We had this issue where some hosts have very strange serial numbers, like something like default string or system serial number. This is from hardware vendors that for some reason didn't set their serial numbers. Currently, now we will not ingest these like default string serial numbers, and we'll just show like the blank button. I don't know if I have a picture of it here. It just looks like a dashed line, so it stops people from getting confused by these strange serial numbers. And we had this issue where MSI installers for Windows weren't working correctly on ARM64, and that was fixed. It was just, there was an out-of-sync issue with Wine in the latest release, but it's been fixed. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and that concludes the improvements. We have one more thing in the OS query section. So back to you, Luke.
All right, we'll get to OS query after software. So over to Tim and the software team.
All right. First on the list is Konstantin.
Share real quick here. Stop. Sorry, guys, I lost my voice. So, but the one big feature is refactoring list host software method, which has kind of been long coming. I basically took the entire method and deleted it and started over. So hopefully now it's a little bit easier to read and reason about.
Real quick, Konstantin, could you show just what the previous SQL statement looked like? Is that in the PR?
Yeah, it kind of is in the PR. You can see the diff here. It's hard to it's hard to show it, but it's right here.
It was a several thousand line SQL statement.
It's about 800 lines of SQL. Yeah.
800 line SQL, which was hard to maintain. We were finding it was really slowing us down every time we updated. So that's why we made the investment to rework that.
Cool. Yep. On to Ian.
Yep. And here we go. So we have a bit of a partnership with Secure Frame. There was a need to have an environment variable to set the about fleet URL regardless of TR fleet server, with the ability to override that with the custom transparency URL as well. This is phrased as a user story as secure frame. I want to show end users the secure frame logo when they click on my device about Fleet so that end users know they're using secure frame. So we have a landing page on fleetdm.com that has the secure frame banner and the environment variable or YAML config, if you so prefer, will get you there.
All right, next up is Haziel.
Hey folks, let me share my screen. Hang on, sorry, working off of just the laptop today, so shuffling windows around. Okay, cool. So yeah, this was a bug with how FleetD is handling software downloads. Basically, like if FleetD had trouble downloading an installer, could be like a really big, I think we would most often see this with like really big installers like Docker, stuff like that, things that are like above a gigabyte. But it could be a bad, like slow connection or something like that. The software would kind of stay stuck in pending forever. And that it would be stuck in pending, basically like FleetD would try again and again, and it would never work. So basically we fixed this so that FleetD tries once to get the installer, and if there's a timeout or a network error or whatever else, then it'll just stop and report back that the installation failed. So this makes the behavior more consistent with other kind of parts of the installation flow, where we're trying once, if it didn't work, we send back a failure, and then the IT admin can try again. But it won't be stuck in this sort of ambiguous state anymore. The next one is this guy. So this was a bug that ultimately was caused by basically software on hosts getting renamed, and it seemed kind of like a bit innocuous, but the fix has been kind of a little bit gnarly, just in terms of kind of refactoring how we come up with that, like the string that's shown as the name of the software in Fleet. There's quite a bit that goes into that, and making sure that we're deduplicating software correctly. Thankfully, on macOS, which is what this is focused on, there's the concept of a bundle identifier, which is a unique identifier for the software. So the fix for this involves one, changing our the OS query detail query to try to rely on attributes of the software that are immutable. So if you go and you rename Google Chrome to Google Chrome 2 in your macOS GUI, Fleet will now be using other attributes to try to get the name instead. And so we shouldn't run into an issue where it should stay Google Chrome even if you rename it to be Google Chrome 2. But then there's other parts of our software ingestion flow that kind of assumed that the name would be treated how it was before. And so now that we're calculating that a bit differently, we've had to change various parts of our software ingestion flow, which has been kind of finicky to do, because that's a really hot path, right? Like that's reading in all of the software that a host reports every time it checks into Fleet. So yeah, taking apart a lot of the guts of the product, but the behavior is a lot better and more consistent now. and it should prevent bugs like this in the future. And that's it.
Hey everybody. Just gonna take you guys into front end UI land real quick. So I have 5 improvements, bug fixes that are going in this release. So the first one is we're just moving the view all host link away from the top right real estate corner, and it's going to be now a part of this host data set down here. And then that way we have our more important software actions that will be coming up in the next several sprints that will be going up here. And that's for all of the different software pages. So vulnerabilities, versions, et cetera, et cetera. Another improvement that we have is there's a lot more truncated tooltips that are being added to the policy query and software tables. So when you're viewing those tables, you will now see truncation for anything that doesn't fit for a more consistent UI experience. The third improvement is actually a bug fix. So on the operating systems page, if you were on that page and you had a specific platform selected, well, I guess I don't have any of those. And there's this next button here, are users who have multiple versions of Mac OS. If they clicked next, it would reset their dropdown, which was a horrible experience. So that is now fixed. And then the last 2 are just quick styling fixes. We had some of these modals that could scroll forever based on whether the script output was really, really long. So those now have a max height. And for the dashboard page, we added Android. I don't have the flag enabled right now, but you would see 7 of these little cards. And if you were to make the screen a lot smaller, that 7th card would be on a row by itself. So that is now cleaned up and spiffy. And that is it for the software team. Back to you, Luke.
Thank you, Rachel and software team. Last up, we have some OS query contributions. So I'll hand it over to Constantine.
Oh man, me and my lost voice again. I should go sing the blues.
Sounds good. It's good gravelly.
Exactly.
The 2 OS query contributions, I won't go into much detail, but they were both towards our better support of Windows programs, being able to identify them kind of like a similar to a bundle identifier that we have on Mac, and then also support for the new MSIX applications, or like the applications you find on the Windows Store. Those were not being included in the OS query programs table. They were not being inventoried. So a lot of this work will be helping our Windows FMA effort.
Great. Thank you, Constantine. Great to see the progress being made on OS query contributions and how many OS query core contributors we have with Fleet now. Speaking of, handing it over to Scott for the last one.
Yes. So the one that I did this sprint was to fix the readout from the temperature control, the temperature sensor tables on OS Query. System management controller in Macs is a mysterious and arcane system that changes with each device that they roll out, and it just hadn't been updated in OS Query, the implementation, for many years, and so many of the keys just didn't work anymore, and we're returning -1 for the temperature. So that's been fixed up now, and hopefully a little bit future-proofed for updates in the future. So fingers crossed on that.
Awesome. Great contributions, everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm going to have 4.67 release candidate up at dog food end of day today. So you're welcome to play with any of these features.